wonderful statement that Mayakovsky made. He said, writing poetry is like mining radium. For every gram, you work a year. Yet how incendiary the burning of those words compared with the smoldering of the raw materials. So we're going to be graced by Edwin's reading and expect some radium, my dear friends. Buckle in.
Thank you, Lucien. Expect poison. I mean, radium. Okay. Yes, Mayakovsky is one of my favorites. So I will be reading from a few different books, and including recent material and unpublished pieces. And here we go. All right, get myself together. Lucien and I were talking about like the aspect of writing for the page, writing for the stage, and now there's writing for the Zoom. So we're gonna cover a little bit of all that today. Okay. The dentist in Marrakesh. The dentists in Marrakesh collect teeth to tell stories. The more teeth they collect, the more stories they have to tell. Worn-out wooden signs have all manner of gum and teeth drawings and paintings for each dentist. The dentists in Marrakesh are skilled at pulling out molars and wisdom. In tiny cubbyholes along narrow Medina streets, you can glance inside. No waiting room, no receptionist. You walk into their dentist chair and mirror. Could be a barber, but there is no pole, no scissors, just knives, tools, a hand-operated drill, and a smiling dentist waiting for you. Smiling with perfect teeth, not his own. The dentist in Marrakesh will give you a good price for every tooth pulled. It is an honor for them to remove your mouth. The stories in their jars are priceless. I would ask people to mute themselves, please. Thank you. Sensei Sunset, a love poem to the alphabet. This is Torn Screams, how it quiet ends starts. Hey, mosca terrible. Dances around waltzes of words and quills to the quick listen to the lingual eclipse in a sky filled with firefly letters that glow when you hear them. KVLU, again you dance inside an event of yourself. Delicate. Could I have a moment of your tongue? Old lady alphabet, could I pour a bath of ancient syllables over thee, celestial harridan? For in thy naked syllogy lies an unknown origin. Towel, sky dry yourself while threads from the head of a grandmother wheeze into a skeltering sigh. You were 17 eyes tall, a beautiful question. An anonymous sensei sunset whispered into the shoulder blades of an Egyptian beetle. Sing, violet-dyed daggers fly, thrusted evenly through blood swamp, where queens live a victory every second. Again you dance, flist breeze, ascending a stair's twist. Nocturnal whimsy throws thee, a shadow screaming through Komodo window, a sound painted by Vasily fountainheads mid-air concussion, a headache voluptuous, a migraine poetic. Nevertheless, you A-E-I-O-U, and you, and I lost my place here. You, virginal in vision and song, yet lovely and moving with time, thy consonant blind, bittersweet eye. Parables wheeze into vowelings I hear, mosca terribles chanticleer. Vaya que por un saso ciego que de permesense, sunset sintiega de intensio friend, o fafa bomulos ta fafa piensai, baby. You and I should unify. Reversing in on itself, Mosca Terrible becomes an alphabet for a faraway pharaoh in a stillborn desert, Chesamia sinking deeper in the sand. Take my hand, my mellow aces, my messiah's desert. No, hesitate and dress up for the 3-minute alphabeta ball. Let me dance in your 3-minute soul. Oh, carissima, you could never be a 3-minute wallflower. Ill, grill, lamb chuck on shank dill, stillborn tender load. Veal scowl across her face, me answer no, she color in her eyes could. Her gold lame shimmered shoulders give me a there's a nightclub in the top of my mouth. Wanna dance? I'm blind, my love, but I can sense the sunset when you're near me. My darling breeze, don't fly without me. Take my hand and come to a time when you were mine. Take my words and give me your past, so that I may live your dreams and make them mine. There are sounds about you that can't be heard except in sunsets. If words repeat words in midair, are you there to breathe them in? Prick your hearing and listen, for it is that pleasure that becomes so violent and so pure that brings you and I to life and so to death. A luminescent pull of a butterfly's wing, leaving a trail of monarchs scattered over the sails. Vaya Chopin dance, be caught in your wind. With clouds as wings, Mephistopheles sings of word angels that mate in midair, my dear. Cumulus interruptus doth a humoresque silver opus, an alpha's dance and song to the wind. Delicate, pull a splinter from a butterfly's wing. A wish impaled wants to be saved sometimes. Years sail by you, old lady alphabet. Carefully broken and lying in sawdust, I live naked in your past. Centuries riddle, 4, 2, 3. What animal has a heart among hearts? I dreamed your dream. I spoke your speak, strumpet of letters. I was sawdust from an ancient syllable, drifting through a pinhole constellation in an infant of sky. You were 17 eyes tall. A beautiful question, an anonymous sensei sunset. Let me borrow your tongue. This is torn screams how it, quiet ends, starts. That's an old performance piece. I wanted to share that, but that's why I forgot part of it because it's an ancient piece. But I like the language visiting the sunset. This we go from there to your clips.
Don't lose so much of yourself. You know your life is precious.
Don't lose so much of yourself.
Don't give so much of
You
yourself.
know your life is precious.
You know your life is precious.
Don't give so much of yourself.
Don't lose.
You know your life is precious.
You know your time.
Don't lose a light on yourself.
Don't hold.
You know your time is precious.
You know that
Don't hold the light on
is
yourself.
vicious.
You know that
Don't
shine
leave
is vicious.
all on a shelf. You know your soul
Don't leave it
is
all on a
precious.
shelf. You know your soul is precious. Don't take it all on yourself. You know you're so delicious. Don't let your rivers erode. You know your mountain mission. Don't ever loosen your hold.
Don't take
You
it
know
all
your
on
fallen
yourself.
edges.
You know you're so delicious. Don't let your
Don't
fissures
sell a
erode.
battle your own.
You know your mountain mission.
Your words are such a treasure.
Don't ever loosen your hold.
Don't savage
You
jabber
know
your
your
poem.
fallen edges. Don't sell
Your
a
will,
battle your own.
your why,
Your
your
words
measure.
are such a treasure. Don't savage jabber your poem.
Don't be the one to believe.
Your will, your why, your measure.
Your life's a crystal lesson. Don't feed your flutter your flow to find your fallen feather. Don't intellect your crawl. Just lower your inhibitions. Don't be the one to believe. Your mission is only position.
Don't be the one to believe.
Don't leave it all in a dream.
Your life's a crystal lesson.
Your rise
Don't feed your
is what
flutter, your flow,
you're wishing.
to sing your fallen feather.
Don't take it all on yourself.
Don't elevate your crawl.
Your mornings in your vision.
Just lower your inhibitions. Don't be the one to believe. Your mission is only position. Don't leave it all in a dream. Your rise is what you're wishing. Don't take it all on yourself. Your mornings in your vision.
better listen alone.
The
The light you steal is precious.
Don't
Don't luminesce your howl. Your soma summons heaven. Your sufferer is savior savant. A cellar is 7 seconds. Your simile server's a saint. A soul in need of heaven. Don't be so hard on yourself. Your sorrow sounds ambitious. Don't say you'll lessen yourself. You're feeling so malicious. Don't lose so much of yourself. You see you're so precious. The rhythm of rapid refrain. Can you see your solar presence? You know your life is precious. You know you're so delicious. You know your life is precious. You know you're so delicious. You know your life is precious. You know you're so delicious.
You know your life is precious. You know you're so delicious.
Tell me a story about a frog named Painting and a bird named Painting and how color changes color to see sky. Tell me about the fire that flies across a cloud called rain. Talk louder, said my ear to my eye. Tell me about the time I saw you close up and called you moon. And you point above and say, sun, visit me before I'm ready to play, and Painting, bird me out of your way. Tell me about a feather called girl and a girl called hair across the shadow of a day that won't sleep. And how things sound before they grow. Did you know me before you saw me? Did you want the things you knew you couldn't keep? And the color that you grasped with and the light you shed your hair with. Tell me about a girl named Story and a boy named Story who showed me how to talk inside my story. And the brush you use for fingers and the tree that calls you mine. Tell me things I know, but tell them how I know you. In the color of I know you, water colored me a bird. And sky is what I bring you, but sky is just a word. Tell me about a yes named no and a no named why. One day there was a painting, said the ear into the eye. I'm just making some noise. Group data. Movement without moment is not revolution, it's just noise. Where in the mass arrest is the alignment of shadows interference on solstice? Does the organism contain itself before consuming its own mass? Is that where disobedience comes from? To inspire change by way of deflection, to inspire reach by way of personal God, the unreachable blog. The further I can't touch you, the easier I can rest. And I'm so tired these days, and that's the point. Is a noise that happens by waiting as loud as the one inside the ears, the one that unravels revolution by gear-wrenched creed that whistles doing out of done? The organized paradigm. We were halfway through a conversation in our life together, then suddenly you disappeared. Is that movement or noise? I don't need to know so much about you. I don't want to be burdened by connection. I do impossible very well. In belief is the motion crossed in front, is the viso crossed in front, vastly like my dance. In motion is front, my eyes was the man as vibratio, as tongue, as oxygen lens was the man over blind, as beauty is racked, is veinous, is cracked, clacked, fisher bed, is beeline, voci crescent, is to go to a bed of glass sheets, yacked, cracks for wrinkles, silent fracks, glass bricks, and back is bee, is I leaf, I run out the foldings in the glass. Saw the drink I wanted. What I needed was a fingertip mirror, my outstretched grab on the ground I kiss on. Mamuna our burial, kneel the right, cross left was way the way of, in the way of man, the man cast light, I lay my lance as a waltz of beliefs, the wall of light, floor of shadow beam, envy in one eye, in one, the downcast trodden, the healed walks in one swipe, a broken light, blind and black is green, and leaf is bee, and bee is yellow, motion in front is York, suddenly was the man, taught trees to cross their arms in belief. He's from New York, from Puerto Rico, New York. He's a New Rican, what they call the Riqueño. Being new or trigueño, speaking new or Rican, a New York-seeking New Yorker, is he new or a porter? A port of sherry, Puerto, York, o Yoko, el Coco. ¿Qué hablas? Se habla Coco, Noco. No city. Port of no city Rican. A Puerto Rico is called a Boricua. A Boricua? A boring what? A bore. This is boring. Into my yawner. What you saying? What new saying? The new say be the new city of York. A Yorkie, a pit, a bull, a toro, a Torres, a Norres, a city no-no, a city Yorker uncorked. A boozer, a bozo, a new bozo, yo soy bozo, in the yo zone. See, yo soy the new yo. That's the new yo, bro. Yo Rican, see, soy no Rican. He's no Rican from Noricua. He's no you, no yo, no I. The I in I is the new no. I be some of that new no from Noricua, bro. I saw E. Cummings the pigeon on First Avenue, between First and Second Street. He was bathed in orange light, or maybe it was just an orange street light. He seemed perplexed by all these people who were so much taller than he. From his angle, everything seemed disproportionately larger. Something he wasn't prepared for, I could tell. I walked by, saw him, and slowed down, as if I would go speak with him. But he looked the other way, and in his by now navy light, he seemed to not want any attention. So I continued, respecting his privacy. E. Cummings the pigeon I saw, and kept on. And in trying, the boy tried writing about the sky. And in writing about the sky, he became the sky, pretty gold and blue. And so he tried to write about the water, and in writing about the water, he became the water, pretty gold and blue. And so he tried to write about the writing, and in writing, the writing became pretty gold and blue. And so the boy tried leaving the writing, and in leaving, he became pretty gold and blue. And so the boy became the water, and in watering the him, his sky became pretty gold and blue. And so the blue tried watering the sky, and in writing about the boy, blue became pretty gold and boy. And so the gold tried writing about the pretty, and in pretty about the blue became boy, boy, and boy. And so the boy tried boying about the sky, and in skying the pretty, pretty became boy, boy, and boy. And so boy, 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 and boy, and in boying the boy became. And gold, and gold, and gold tried golding the water, and in water was the blue who wrote about the boy who tried writing about the sky. I saw you Empire State Building, looking for your twin brothers. I saw you watching your brothers burning, helpless to the ground. I look up at you, tall, proud beacon. I too am a tower. It's my last name in Spanish. I look at you, glistening in the morning, shining at night. I saw you watching your brothers die. They were beautiful and tall, although I think you have more character, but older brothers wear their age well. I saw you helpless and wanted to comfort you, but you're too big to hug. So I just keep looking at you, crying for you, holding you in my stare. Us towers, we have to stick together. I am a human. I take a machine to air so the sky can see me. A bird does not belong there when I am there. A pet does not stop me from reading the paper. A pet does not belong to have people feel for him in the newspaper. A jet does not need me to fall from the sky when I am there inside the engine. A kitten will not be a bull running away from a stab. An elephant will not cry when his friend dies. Does not get a moving picture show made of liget to show me how to feel. A eagle does not stay with one love for his life and ever. The beach is where I see the mountain, older than where I stand. Does a fish not know taking a drug will make me kill you? I'm a human. I want. I do. I used to be the picture of a family man. I used to have insurance and a family plan. I used to be a fixture for the family man. I used to have endurance for the family plan. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to have a garden with a place in the sun. I used to have a shoulder I could lay my head on. I used to be the model of a bodily soul. I used to hide a bottle in the watering hole. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to be the leader of a nation of woe. I used to push a button and the missile would go. I used to blow the whistle and the fizzle below. I used to put the sugar in the cappuccino. My people suffer more than yours do. 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 Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to have a limo, but they took it away. I used to have a pillow, but they took it away. I used to have a baby, but they took it away. I used to have a maybe, but they took it away. I used to watch the enemy before it was me. I used to watch the battle be the battle I see. I used to watch theology be all you can be. I used to watch reality before a TV. When people suffer, they go dumb. 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 I used to beat around the bush and call it a day. I used to peter out about a third of the way. I used to pay attention to the mention of new. I used to have a used-to-be addiction to you. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. I used to be the brother of the people I know. I used to be the lover of the people I know. I used to be the other of the people I know. I used to be the color of the people I know. I bet a booty's gonna better the flow. I beat a better booty with a bubble of blow. I better let a booty be the Buddha below. A Buddha better beat it if he doesn't belong. I used to suffer, but I don't. 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 You ever get a feeling life is passing you by? You ever get a feeling you could never describe? You ever get a feeling you were never alive? You ever get a feeling I could take you alive? I used to be the sinner when a sinner was fun. I used to be the sinner when a sinner was fun. I used to be the winner when a winner was fun. I used to have fun, now I'm holding a gun. Some people suffer and go pa 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 pow. Some people suffer and go pa 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 pow. Some people suffer and go pa 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 pow. Some people suffer and go pa 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 pow. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. Viva la 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 la. This is called Tempest.
Listen, tell who hearing what you were saying, everyone would feel better. So that time can be right. It's never knowing time like that. If time can be right, it's never knowing time. In a time like now, saying what there is, the opposite of seeing what
For whatever it
has been
gather what
something
number of people
happening.
say what you've been saying.
For whatever it is,
Hearing what you were saying.
Never know
Everyone
time
has
in a
that.
time like
They listen
now.
like you. Tell who it is.
saying,
to
hearing
witness
what
your
you
world,
are saying.
use your
We all-
job.
Everyone
The
will
time
make
can be
it
right.
happen.
Never knowing
Listen,
time. The
listen,
time
tell
like
who
now.
will listen.
Saying what there
Where's
is.
your world?
The
It
opposite
is your
of seeing
job
what
at
makes
times
what
to be
happens.
right,
Has
but
to be
it's
right.
never knowing time
Something
at
has to be
times
right.
like now.
No one
Saying
told
what
you.
there is,
What
the
they
opposite
said.
of
Gathered and
saying,
stopped.
making what
No one
happens
ever
that
told
hasn't
you. No one
been
told
seen.
you to
Listen,
stop.
like
No
happening
one
to say what
hear
you're
what
saying.
told
So
you to
whatever
say.
it
Everyone
takes
will
to
feel
It is
gather
your
and
job.
stop
Hearing
a
what
number
Time
of
can be right.
Everyone will
Means
feel
never
better.
knowing time, and a time like now, saying what there is.
Two.
Nous vous déchaînerons
Nimen
des
Jiangwei.
torrents.
Les haremos nuestra gota de lluvia. Les enseñaremos nuestra agua.
Vous nagerez dans l'écume de nos flots.
No tendrán ni paraguas.
Vous vous perdrez dans nos mots.
Nous traverserons
Nimen
vos
Jiangwei.
orages.
Se ahogarán en nuestras palabras.
Nous vous déchaînerons des torrents de mots.
Nimen Jianghui. Yo Jianga Haiyang.
Les haremos nuestra gota de lluvia. Les enseñaremos nuestra agua.
Nimen Jiang Yao. Chan Ni Zai Woman de Wan Zhong.
Vous nagerez dans l'écume de nos flots.
No tendrán ni paraguas.
Woman Jiang Yao. Zai Nimen de Haiyang Jiao Shui.
Vous vous perdrez dans nos mots. Nous traverserons vos orages.
Nimen Jianghui. Zai Woman de Haiyang Sha Yu.
Se ahogarán en nuestras palabras.
Three. Everyone will feel better hearing what you are saying, since what you are saying no one told you to say. Everyone will feel better hearing what you are saying, since what you are saying no one told you to say. A number of people have gathered and stopped for whatever it takes to say what you say. A number of people have gathered and stopped for whatever it takes to say what you say. Something is happening that hasn't been seen, making what happens the opposite of seeing. Something is happening that hasn't been seen, making what happens the opposite of seeing. Saying what there is in a time like now means never knowing time, if time can be right. Saying what there is in a time like now means never knowing time, if time can be right. It is your job to witness your world, to tell who will listen so they listen like you. It is your job to witness your world, to tell who will listen so they listen like you. 4. We will storm you with words. You will have an entire ocean. We will make you our raindrop. You will have no umbrella. We will teach you our water. You will drown in our words. We will give you an ocean. You will swim in our wash. We will make you our rain. You will have no umbrella. We will water your ocean. You will drown in our words. We will swim in your storm. You will rain in our ocean. We will teach you our water. You will drown in our words. As you get older, your net gets smaller, weaker and bigger at the same time. Your filter weathered, looser, finite. What gets to you now isn't debris but gold. Scattered nuggets open only to you because you're older. Your level of interaction becomes a deeper relationship with the trash you leave behind. Complexity fingers clarity. Blood from my nose, from my pen. Feed the tiger to cure the bruise. Abyss enters the conversation. Where the space you enter is the canvas, the sound you enter the world. Which body will you claim as yours? Reflexive, anti-arch, the posture of allowing in, reframed by the openings you choose. How quickly does the cognitive opening frame familiarity with survival? To accept the unknown distance as an entry for a world you don't know. Streaks appear on my legs in the middle of a workout. I am disingenuous in my gender by this fact. What I wish for self is to see what self allows. Referendum on years brings focus to fermentation. The room I entered is explicitly intimate, as the neck I stroked 4 years ago. At the time of this reading, a thread appears, an edge for a disappeared sheet of glass, a wall against the shards I seek. My own circumferent oblivion, corralled in stasis, gorgeous by those before me. Abyss enters the conversation. Who is unreal to the pain they feel, the unknown holding of their inner psalm? Who am I to unreal expectation, to dare unreal its world? Lost my step. Go ahead. Abyss was talking. This is called regime. Red ant, black ant, 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 different. Of what is. This is my next to last poem. If I have mirrors of silence, parallels of silence drawn as if it is only in breath that path is allowed its breath as parallel to mine. If I am of mistakes, formed of mistakes, mistakenly informed of night, of its obligation for mystery, of mystery to mistake its night, informed by obligation. It is only, if only could be I, that I grew up hearing such tales of hearing so as to define tales, the idea of tales as the accumulations of hearing whispered into glass. The idea of glass, of what I can't touch. The idea of what I can't touch whispered into glass. If, as you say, you have saying said to you, and I have retreated into self as path, as you say, longing for direction, back to a self, being its retreat as a substitute for saying, for lower level selfing, for collecting tolls from severed sensitivities, from severed self, from the severed self as a sensitive being retreated. As if reason were enough for ideals, for empathetic ideals raised on severed selves, once taught to retreat from what can't be touched. To can't once reason touched ideal, as if it is, as you say, reason enough for me to stop speaking, to start again when the start again stops, you see? As if seeing was said in place of self, when saying something, when something says I, when I have something to say, retreat, let me, into my saying. When I retreat into the saying of what I have, if I have taken on, as you say, the name of affluence with generic tones, with implicit generational tones influenced by seers of hierarchy, as practiced by non-colored room dwellers, dwellers of room, the DOR, by dwellers of color, the DOC, the modern DOC, the DOC of the here, this room, right here, right now, you dwellers, uncolored, unbound by now, you dwellers of now, the DO now, as if how were replaced by saying, as if now were replaced by saying D before O or C, or now. To give me strange for strange to be, to give me off for off to be, the DOC of extraneous offerings, the dwellers of offerings, the DOO that do. As if silence were beneath offering, as if silence were offering something, anything beneath voice. Under the voiced uneathing, voicing the neath of neath as a form of telling, a form of saying what you say by pulling in direction what away wants to be to you. What does away mean to you when you pull it away from you? What does away tell you, your voice tell you when pulled away from it's double my voice until I make nothing underneath, until I make nothing of your hearing. Double my effect for gang speak of Gangendracht. Milfun give a fonden fleck. Tries to say, try, how hearing you belongs to me, how mystery. Into the taken drawn inspect, into the only drawn wall I've seen, as if drawing in your as if drawing walls into a room would inspect its generosity, its allowance of generosity, a parallel generosity to you right here, right now, as if the generosity offering dwellers, you know, the G-O-D, be silent parallels of death, of breath. If I, as you have spoken clear to what's in here, to what accumulates, to what in here, to what informs in sight, my sight, the token parallel, the stolen rear, the spice too hot, the exotic out, licked one night, the one time, just one more, right? The sunken sail past, right? The dwellers drawn by paramite, by parasite, by light of likely windows seen. To see, it is of seen, of what it is to see. I wish my life had been simple and timeless. Here by heaven's stream, I dream of you. If no one knows I'm here, how will you find me? Where sails of satin clouds, empty in you. Where fly drift, water dunes, bloom, feather plumes die. Trickle me endlessly, I dream of you. If you listen to the stream, secret wings talk to you. Waters of passion splashing tell you, thank you. Lucian, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Oh, wow. That was such a journey. I feel like, you reminded me of what poetry can be, which is just a transport to a whole other way of being and thinking and feeling.
Absolutely, yeah. It's there for us to play with.
What was your doorway to such play?
That's actually a really good question, the doorway. I would say there's like an instinct to kind of just try it, for one thing. And then I guess over the years, the reactions I get from the people I connect with, the audience, like, oh yeah, that reminded me of so-and-so or so-and-so. And I realize, okay, I do want to be reminded to go beyond myself. So just I realize that there's a chance. I think poetry is a gift. It's that we all have, honestly. And I feel that there's the time to share is the gift. Like I look at readings as a real communal experience to kind of like let us know that we're allowed to kind of think whatever we think, and how language can be taken. And we know the power of language, especially in the culture that we're in now. To see what stories what narratives are we telling? What are we trying to get at? What is everybody's individual kind of place in the continuum? I mean, I feel like the connections for all of us are there for us to take or to ignore. So I guess I want to let people know that it's okay to feel at the core of it.
And have you experimented with techniques like the cut up method that Brian Geeson and William Burroughs explored, and their concept of the third mind, like this way in which somehow you take a text, you cut it up, you splash it together and splice it together, and there's a third mind that can be conjured. Is that
yeah, I mean, I played with a lot of that earlier on, and I think after a while of doing it for a while, you just start thinking that way. You just start thinking poetically, like the story that you're seeing is actually being rearranged in your brain as you're thinking it. So the cut-ups was like that is fun play. That is like a fun thing in the beginning, but then there's a point where you want to see that, okay, what am I actually saying? What story, what am I actually connecting to? Like, yes, we can rearrange words and all that stuff, but where is my soul and my body in the work? And I think that writing that is at least aware of itself having a body can connect to people that you've never met. Somebody that has not heard you or is just picking up your book or something, and they see some pieces and space and air in the work that allows them in. That's why I wanted to kind of go all over the place today, to do that performance slam one in the beginning, the Sensei Sunset, because that you can imagine that's like this little opera, that this whole little story around the alphabet. But on stage, I kind of really get into it. I really embody all the different characters. But then since lockdown, to kind of like, how do you work with Zoom with this format? How do you work with these windows to let people know that I'm talking to you in your room, literally, and that it's okay for you to either look away or just to kind of like feel it either way, to know that this is not going away. This is here for us. It's a tool, how we use it. So I think my answer went all over the place. I don't know if but yeah. I think there's a point also where like, I think a few years ago, I feel that the writing that I've been doing since the beginning is actually very ecologically based, like, about the environment, about like the eco-poetics of transformation, the transformative mind, the transformative world that we're in. That was like the piece I read about the man who taught trees to cross their arms in belief. I like that piece because it has this strange kind of, to me, New York City language, like a lot of invented language in that piece. But there's kind of like a soul to it that's, it's jazz driven, but it ends with like about the trees, about the man. This, in my mind, it's like this, there's so many denizens in the city that each, homeless and not, and just wandering around, that have their own worlds. So that piece for me captures that, the invention at every corner. But then it comes back down to like the purity, like what is the world that we're in? So in this case, the poem is talking about trees, but language, for me, language is the transformative aspect. That's like the fertile ground to really kind of nurture and to really connect us all. I've been writing this year, the recent writing I'm doing is is about our spatial awareness, the spatial, how we kind of like use the reading and also the page, and how we are allowing language to kind of like create this sort of charged surface between messenger and receiver. So I think I've always written about that without saying those words. I've always been writing about like what is it, what am I doing here, and what are you doing there? You know, you dwellers of room, like that piece is talking about, that kind of goes into all the DOC and DOA, which I that's language play, but that's also rooted around hierarchy and control and all that. So my answers go all over the place. So.
Your answers are full of questions. That's so great.
That's conundrum.
Yeah, exactly. You said something about writing to Zoom. I mean, were there pieces that you did write to Zoom that we heard today?
I guess well, the piece about the Tempest, the piece where I was doing the little performance, was not written for Zoom, but it was written in response to 9/11. And it actually came from, I think one of the terrorists said something about like, you know, we will show you, it's like, you know, we will show you our water, or like there was this kind of innocuous line about like the dare of hierarchy, the dare of teaching someone their water. And I just found that so striking. So the piece came from that small little nugget about like, what are we going to cross? You know, so the piece is actually about listening, and it's about poetry, but it's also about the powers that are not in our control. And I realized that actually applies now. Any kind of trauma where you're trying to figure out where your next step is built around what is my next step, literally. And I realized that could work in Zoom in some kind of way, to kind of just take, I mean, that piece I was almost going to do with just a blank screen, like to just have the words. The actual recording was for many years ago done with these 4 writers who interpreted the poem in Arabic, in Chinese, Spanish, and French. And we performed it a few times years ago. But I like the recording. I like the recording kind of like takes you to another mindset, which is what poetry should do. But specific to your question, specifically for Zoom, there are some other pieces I had that I'd written for Zoom that I just didn't want to do today. I felt like I had a journey in mind, so I kind of like, you know, threaded all those together in that way.
Yeah, your journey in mind was a journey of mind. Roxy has a question.
I don't know so many. I'm going to try. That was just so amazing. Oh, God. I mean, I'm one of the people that in the world that can be transported by Zoom interactions and readings. And I know that a lot of my students have had just all kinds of emotional health issues being taught on Zoom. And so to try to embrace that embodied feeling that I associate with your poetry because of your use of breath, mostly. So you say language is the transformative thing. But I think in some ways the spatial awareness that you just said that you're working with in your own writing right now, and that charged surface between the receiver and the giver requires in some ways what do I want to say, a cohabitance of this kind of precarity, this vulnerability between the giver you and the receiver us. And so how do you feed off of, in some ways, that I mean, if we've got our cameras off, or if we're just kind of not there, does it affect you? That's one question. And the other is, you want to say a few words about just, you know, I mean, I'm thinking about Jack Kerouac's school of disembodied poetics. That's Naropa, guys. But you're such an embodied poetics person, right? Especially through the breath in my mind. And so, you know, there's the aspect of what you want to say about your own embodied poetics, and then how you chime off of people on Zoom when it comes to the breath. And
yeah, those are great directions to go in. I think the first part is how do you sort of like allow somebody, how do you allow a receiver on Zoom to show, or at least to embrace, their own vulnerability? thereby letting mine in. And I think that connects even with the live reading, like in a reading situation. I'm very aware of like letting the audience in. And the way I approach that by having some pieces that are, some humor, some pieces that, the little bit of absurdity to kind of show that, okay, it's important to show the receivers, specifically to Zoom, let's say, that you don't know everything. that you're as much wondering as they are. So I think that there's a little bit of a commonality in like showing like having a base ground humanity, a base like we're all in this together idea. Um, you can't, of course, dictate anybody's vulnerability or what they're going through. I think what you can show is your own trust in your voice or trust in the fact that you're on a search. And if people can hear that or feel that, that's one step to opening themselves to seeing where I can go. In this case, with this medium, um, when during lockdown, there were a few. I got a chance to explore how to work with the medium, how to like use the share screen and the visual and all. So that's as much of me years ago exploring the stage and what happens with lighting and so forth. So I think it's how you're using the medium. But it does come down to vulnerability, to kind of letting people on Zoom know that we're all sort of in this together. That's maybe easier said than done, and that's not a specific solution or answer. It's a feeling. Um, okay, so the I think disembodied poetics as a phrase is sort of like not necessarily a joke. It's more just like a question. Because I don't know if Jack Kerouac himself thought he was disembodied. I think it was just like, let me put this out there. I think knowing Anne Waldman, she would put out phrases to have you question them. She's a master of like having the a few phrases thrown out that can mean many different things. The embodiment in my poetics, I guess I feel the space. I want to know. I want to know the poem from the inside. So I want to know. So, and the reason I want to know the poem from the inside is I want to hear what it has to tell me. I want to hear what it's sort of like pointing me towards. Um, all the pieces in the different ways today had an aspect of this body awareness that was like very much talking to me as I was talking to it. Um, I think poets are good at coming up with phrases like what I just said, which was confusing, but I purposely I want to sort of like allow myself that sort of like a vortex to kind of go within the search of what has just been said. The one poem I read before about at the end where I do impossible very well. So that was specifically towards a relationship, but I think it applies to, oh yeah, I'm the master of impossible. Let me try that. So and I enjoy that search. I enjoy that impossibility. Um, I learned a long time ago that not everybody will follow you on your path, and that's okay. People will get lost, and they'll sort of wait for the next one, and that's okay. I think, and sometimes that is not talked about a lot. Like, oh no, I've got to connect. I've got to make sure the thing happens as I expected it. But I think if you know that you are as true to yourself as you can be, the rest will kind of follow in its own form.
And could you speak a little bit, Edwin, about the rational and the irrational? Because there was something so beautiful at certain moments in your cascade of words today that I felt, oh my God, like this is almost a drunken, babbling madman at the corner. And yet it's not, and it really like reminded me of something that I reflected on, that poetry is not irrational or rational. It's super rational. It just goes to that place that transcends the rational. So if you can speak to that.
Well, you're using the tool that we use to communicate, language, and trying to make that into art, or just trying to use one tool for another purpose. So I'm fascinated by what syntax does, like how to subvert what the subject, like to look at the rules of grammar, and I think poets do that, just shift things around to kind of like to get underneath the meaning, underneath the rational. In a way, like a friend of mine years ago said, like, everybody else is talking weird, you're talking normal. So it's like yes, right. Well, I'm rational. Everybody else is irrational. So rather, the poem is rational, I should say. The regular speaking is irrational. So I like that idea because there's, I think, art or anything that's off the beaten path is looking at the world sideways. You're sort of traveling at a subject matter parallel next to it, and it's sort of our job to poke holes, to kind of like to be porous, and to allow those holes to come back to us, but also to just show the world that no, we don't have the answers. What is rational? What is irrational? So for me, the working with the actual material, the materiality of language, is where it starts. How does the eye, the poem about the painting, the bird becoming the sky, and so all those these are all aspects of the phenomenology where we're giving a lot of we're embodying a lot of subjects, or a lot of maybe objects with subjectivity. So we're embodying a lot of like non-living things with life, and that's sort of our job also, to kind of like show what's possible, what's not possible. So it comes down to grammar. It comes down to just like looking at the world askance, sideways view, like, and to exactly have that question: what is rational? What is irrational? I'm not sure, but it makes me feel X. It makes me feel a certain way. And how do you explain feeling? How do you explain that? You don't. You just feel it. So there's the aspect of the poem on page is one life. The poem heard, the breath, the space between is a whole nother life. I think a poem has many, many lives. The one life the poem had before it ever saw me, it was flying somewhere in the sky. I said, okay, I'm going to choose you. And so I like the different aspects of the rebirths and the recycling of language that happens in the life of the poem.
Roxy, you still have
Anybody else?
Oh, I do. I'm sorry. No, to give other people a chance. I'm just listening voraciously.
Rand,
Folks,
you wrote something fascinating in the chat, so maybe you can bring that to the conversation.
Yes, thank you. Unfortunately, I have to leave very soon, so I don't have, but I'm so glad I came to this. And what I wrote is just been confirmed in our most recent discussion. What I wrote in the chat was that I was somehow reminded of this passage by Maria Tsvetaneva about saying basically what Edwin just said, which is what I'm trying to do is something that's impossible. I'm trying to use words and meanings to express something beyond or different than, in a different register, and she calls it and so it just resonated for me, and I threw in that quote, and it ties in with what you're saying.
That's great.
I find this totally fascinating, and it reminds me a lot also of there's a hip hop artist here in Philadelphia who's working with a dancer, and they're creating a sort of dialogue where they talk and dance, and it's all kinds of things. Thank you.
Great. That's great. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that. I love the various disciplines informing language. I love when that happens.
Michael, you have a question?
Yeah. First, thank you for this wonderful performance. And I've done some Zoom only kinds of things. Probably during the pandemic, I created maybe 30 things that were deliberately meant for performing on Zoom. And it's great to take advantage of PowerPoint and animation and things like that. So, but I love what you did with recording and your voice over the recording, which I want to try that. So my question is a little different. I was wondering if you could talk about the classes you teach at Columbia. And the context for that is my daughter just got accepted for Columbia.
Oh, fantastic.
She's not sure if she'll go there yet. She hasn't committed.
Okay, all right. Great. At Columbia in the spring, I'm doing this course called Special Projects Workshop, which is a purposely vague title. And that's for students who are working on manuscripts that are not quite poetry or fiction or one specific thing. So the students have works that are projects that explore a certain topic, and the manner in which they're addressing it can come out in letter writing or in poetry or nonfiction or journalism. It's a wide range. So that's the spring semester, and it's fun for me because excuse me, I sort of shepherd and guide them, and in the process, I research, what they're interested in, and which is all over the place. So that does bring things outside of poetry into my own inspiration. In the fall, I teach this class on the writing process itself. It's called Brain Lingo: Writing the Voice of the Body. So that one is more. I'm actually using some of my learnings from Naropa, and I'm integrating that into Columbia. So it's not nobody else is really. It's great to have a chance to do that at Columbia because there's a lot of great courses about the craft. My course in the fall is more about the creative process. Where does the seed of the idea come from? So I integrate body, dance, movement, sound, a lot of different things to kind of see what happens with language when we allow ourselves to nurture the senses, basically. So that's that. That's the fall. So.
So, my daughter is likely to take freshman English.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
she's undecided in her major. Who knows what she would do, though, although she's a very good writer.
Great.
More into fiction, though.
I had a
Your
student who
classes?
went there, Michael, in journalism. I don't know, but don't know if that would help. A practical form of writing. But Edwin, is this what you just described to Michael, similar to what Naropa and Ed Dorn and everybody kind of talks about with investigative poetics, or, the saturation job, kind of your transgenre form of looking? But you said that the main thing in your spring course, whatever form you choose, is to look into, what did you say, some kind of content. So exploring, would that be similar to investigative poetics, looking and doing some research and going deep into something?
No, it's my own research to kind of understand their specific projects. I mean, some of them may have investigative poetics. Some of them may have a nonfiction novel based on, turn of the century, whatever. So it's a wide range. It's basically a hybrid, a manuscript that has hybrid capabilities. So I'm sort of shepherding that. But in the process, it is my own investigation, my own investigative poetics. So that's probably what you picked that up from. But yeah.
I love that term, Edwin, shepherding. It just, I don't know, you've used it a couple of times in the last minute or two. It's just beautiful. It just feels very different, like you're making a paradigm shift about the teaching process. I'm guessing that shepherding is something you actualize, right?
Yeah. I try to. I think it's good because they sort of may not know exactly where they're headed. I equate that to like when I start a poem, I'm not sure where it's gonna go. So so my relationship with their projects is to kind of like, we don't know where we're going. Let's just find out what we need to get there, and then other stuff that backs that up, of course. So.
Michael?
Another question. Who might be some of the oldest dead poets that you love?
Wow.
In other words, in contrast to the new and the current and all that stuff, what are some of the oldest influences?
Well, I mean, we talked about Mayakovsky before, Lucien, and we talked about Vladimir Mayakovsky, but I mean, Baldwin, um, geez, Neruda. There's quite a few. One of my first influences was Gerard Manley Hopkins, and his nature-driven inventions. Gosh, actually, the Russian futurist Vladimir Klebnikov. Um, so those are just a handful. Gertrude Stein, of course, and Emily Dickinson. I mean, it's quite a range. I think it's the pot is wide. It's a matter of like just seeing what kind of sticks at that specific moment.
Should I ask if there are any poets you just don't get?
Um, if there's a poet that I don't get, I give. I used to have a problem with that, but it's like, okay, now everybody has their own approach, and there's a reason. Me, quote unquote, not getting it. It's my problem, not theirs. So it's the same with, if somebody doesn't get me, you just have to move forward and just continue with your own voice. But no, more power. It takes a lot to kind of just like, dare reveal your scrolls to the world. So it's like, fine, do that.
You're not going to throw any names under the bus.
No, there's no names to throw. Not really, no.
Something you said reminded me of Helen Keller. And the quote is, "But if I write what my soul thinks, then it will be visible, and the words will be its body."
Hmm.
And of course, her coming from that incredibly, limited place of lacking both sight and sound. And yet I know that she wrote an essay on optimism, and she said, I'm going to paraphrase this, but that, a room that has 3 doors doesn't have less inside it than a room with 5 doors. And, of course, Helen Keller was able to become the first blind deaf college graduate. And I guess we could just speak to that idea of the words becoming the body of the soul.
Wow. So there's a slight faith-based aspect of that that I don't jive with, but there is the sense of like it's what I mentioned before about the tool making, sort of like using the aspects of language and rearranging syntax and all that to kind of create your communication. I think you're building a body every single time. I think you're sort of like allowing the language to lead you to where the soul wants to be. I think that I mean, this is probably a whole thesis of what is and is not a soul. Where can the soul be found within? I think the aspect, this kind of goes a little towards the vulnerability that we were talking about before, about like allowing the vulnerable self allowing the vulnerable self a place in your life. And I think people spend a lifetime seeking that. Poetry, I think the nature of poetry's ability to go underneath language. The poem I read about the neath, going underneath the voice, is a little bit about that, like just seeking that the space beneath what we think we're trying to say every day to ourselves, not just in poetry, is a lifelong mission. And there's got to be a soul in there somewhere. I think that, and the aspect of soul is also very tricky because that sort of is right there limiting to kind of like to say that anything has or does not have a soul. what does that mean to its life? Does that mean that it's not a valuable, energetic addition into the life that we're all living? You know, where are we allowing ourselves what matters? And I think what matters is vulnerability, is to know, like I said, that you don't know everything, but that you're interested in partaking, in contributing to the life that you're in. So the soul within, I look at like, so Helen Keller, that reminds me of like, so Larry Eigner, this incredible poet who wrote from a place of disability, but just beautiful, beautiful work. And what makes it beautiful, and that's also like me, a person saying something's beautiful doesn't mean that you, a person, agrees. We're just all here talking. So the idea of like having someone that is able to take their ability to function in the world and convey that on the page the way Larry Agner did is really an inspiration to kind of like know what is supposedly holding him back is just tools. His mind and his wisdom was beyond his affliction. So his pieces are very, very body oriented and very, very sparse, and the page is soul. You can put all of that into it. So the conversation about soul existing in language is very fraught, is filled with a lot of openings, a lot of possibilities, for sure. What do you think about that?
If I may, I'm thinking of Emerson, saying this the world hates, the soul becomes, right? And it is this kinetic quality. And so you put the words out there and they can be mistaken or just taken otherwise, just the functional shift from a noun to a verb, let's say, or just the ear that has another language in it, hearing a potential, particularly like in Romance languages, this happens all the time. But what's happening is a happening. It's that kinetic kind of moment. Things are being, and I think, certainly, I would just think also of Ovid and Metamorphosis, or even those wonderful statues, Bernini, where you can just see Daphne becoming, right, a laurel tree. It's just it's poetry in motion, so to speak. And so the things become alive in conversation because they're out there, and nobody understands me. So, right?
Very much, yeah. It comes to come alive in conversation. That's a beautiful, phrase, yeah, because that's exactly what poetry like. Because I say it, it is. Because it's been said, it is. Not because I say it, because it's been said. So, and then the problem with that is that, so then what isn't? What isn't be? What isn't existence? It goes on and on and on. So it's all material for poetry. All the questions.
You said earlier, Edwin, it might have been before the reading that language is my religion. Were you just saying that facetiously, or is that really true? And if so, is this your church, or where are we?
Yeah. No, I said that somewhat facetiously, but I mean, there's I feel like language. I know that's a charged phrase to say, to call anything blank is my religion, anything, because religion, the key phrase, the key word there is religion. And I growing up Catholic and religious, and then kind of like finding poetry as my real place of worship, if we're going with the metaphors, I saw like what the power of the word, what all this ability can do to kind of shift entire civilizations. So I feel that language is my saving grace. It's my savior. I would say language is my savior more than my religion. I don't know if that makes it even Because I think that the aspect of like one's religion is so filled with other questions. So I kind of like I mean, readings are always like the gatherings of like people to hear the one voice. I mean, how is that not a religious, thing? Um, so that's been the case, especially coming from slam, coming from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, which was so slams, and which is like within a year I saw that slams were not for me because I didn't write poems that had specific endings that got the award or whatever. But what it taught me was how to connect with the audience and how and what's happening with me and you over there. And then I spent time figuring out how to do that on the page or exploring that on the page, I should say. But those days at the Nuyorican were like a church. It's like you go there and we're all gathered, and Naropa has that. I think any poetry scene would have that sense of like a communal gathering, because we all want to hear people that, in a way, we want to be around people that think like us, even if we don't think alike. So by that, I think I mean that we all want to be around open-minded people. I think the open-mindedness that poetry attracts, that's definitely a denizen. There are certain kind of people that are interested in what poetry can bring them, of all religions, of all faiths. I think there's an interest in what language can do to kind of help me understand my own meaning, what we talked about before. So that there's a place of worship thing about that sensibility of all coming together, so that we can all feel that we're not alone, even though we don't agree with each other at that place. We agree on listening to what's being to the fact that we can say something. The saying of saying is what the poem about the Neath, about all that, like what are we listening to and how are we letting in what we're listening to. So yes, losing my religion.
And it's such a beautiful statement when you talked about like there's always a body that we're putting together, and it gave me this feeling almost like a Frankenstein, and
Yes.
and you're just putting together these words, and then you're just hoping that it will have life. I want to throw in a quote from Benjamin Percy, the novelist, and it brings me into the question that I want to ask you, which is that Benjamin Percy makes this distinction between revision for novice and experienced writers. When revising, the beginning writer spends hours consulting the thesaurus, replacing a period with a semicolon, cutting adjectives, adding a few descriptive sentences. Whereas the professional writer mercilessly lops off limbs, rips out innards like party streamers, drains away gallons of blood, and then calls down the lightning to bring the body back to life. So my question is about revision, and how, if you could speak to our poetry junkies here about revision and what you've learned, and if you have any particular, like, wonderful nuanced tips to improve our work. Thank you.
How many limbs I've lopped off? Is that what you're asking? Gosh, I don't know if there's one specific direction for that. I think that there's definitely that, like in the beginning, there was more okay, move this period there, that period there, and more recently, it's more like, what am I saying? What am I actually saying? This line need to be there. If there's a line that I love that just doesn't belong there, it becomes a title or it's another poem. But I think you read a lot of other people and you see what affects you and what moves you and why it works for them. I feel that it's what I said before about learning how to listen to the poem that you're writing. It sort of directs you where you want to go. Steve Cannon, one of my first mentors, who passed about 8 years ago. But when I was doing my poems for slams, he would have a little workshop for us young slam poets. And it was so great. He was almost blind, so it was even more fascinating that we would read a poem. He didn't have it in front of him. We would read to him, and he would know what section was or was not working, but I learned about listening to your poem from him, about when the poem is thinking it wants to go in one direction, but in reality, it's finishing a thought process. I imagine the brevity of poetry line by line. It is a combination of thoughts. It's a very, I mean, poesis is, I think it's Greek for making. I know poetry comes from the idea of making. We're stitching together. We're Frankensteins. We're kind of putting these pieces together. And listen to your different thought processes. How are they bouncing off each other? Is what I would say. Yes, punctuation and line breaks, all that stuff enters into it. But I look at those little groupings of thought patterns. Like, I like finding a thread and allowing myself to deviate and to see what's over there. And then, oh, I'm back here. I like those tangents. I like those different places. Because something new will be waiting for me that I didn't expect in those places. But then I remember, oh yeah, there's a poem here. There's a center somewhere. So I've learned, I think, over the years that, okay, it's a matter of thought patterns. The thought pattern could be 2 words or like 3 sentences, but it's like, it's a moment. Does that moment belong there? So.
Fantastic. And maybe it kind of flows into that, Edwin. You know, Stanley Kunitz had this marvelous consideration that he said that he likes an ending that is both a door and a window. And could you speak to us about your endings? Because some of them were definitely coming to a crescendo. Some were anticlimactic, almost like softenings, almost reminding me of, like, in terms of music, like the fade out. And you literally had some fade outs in some of your poems. Because speak to us about endings. Thank you.
Yeah, some of the pieces, there was just a handful of poems that I gave you titles. I think a lot of them I just went from one to the other. And that's a tricky thing. It doesn't always work, so I apologize if you were left hanging. I'm still learning about that a little bit myself. I like the nonstop flow, but I also appreciate a moment to breathe for the audience to kind of go like, oh, okay, that was that, and that was that. The poem itself, the ending, I think there's some pieces I have that are mantras that kind of like the energy builds upon itself and the ending sort of tells you where it wants to go. But I like when there's an opening at the end. There's this, who said it? Oh, years ago, somebody said something about it at the end about like, your turn now. So the poet is telling the reader, okay, here. Which means I'm not giving you an answer. I'm not giving you a solution. I'm just giving you another door, which I love. I love that idea of the poem itself has doors for sure. And then at the end, what is that one more door that either connects to the middle or the beginning of the poem? Or, because it has to be in the same voice. It has to be, it has to be within the world that you're making. But to end a poem by showing that there's more is really thrilling and kind of hard to do, but worth exploring and investigating. How you kind of like, you finish you think you're done, and then wait, there's one more line, and that's the line that's actually the key, or like a little, okay, it's on you now. As opposed to slam poems that we end, oh, fantastic, they have a definite arc. So I learned about the arc. I learned about this narrative, beginning and ending, through that process. And I saw the value of sometimes having one, but more often than not, working against that. I think Mary Oliver does a great job of that, of having beautiful endings that are open. A lot of poets have that. So that I think endings for me are always like a chance for like a little more, not done yet, and then, oh, I got to turn the page, something new. I like that kind of the continuance, which makes me want to revisit the poem and see and go over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you blasted open so many doors today because Michael mentioned wanting to experiment with pre-recorded vocals and then reading over that. I found that to be so brilliant, and I
That was
actually,
a whole other thing. Yeah.
and I really loved it when this moment when you did stop talking in a sense and you just did this visual filling of this thread with the paper, and I don't know, there was something so moving about it. I don't know. I don't even right now, I'm in the experience. I'm still in this conversation with you. We're in it together. And I'm not sure why I found it so moving. I mean, it just was moving. I'm sure I'm the only one who was moved at that moment, but I really was, and I'm still not sure why. It was just maybe it was even the context of the poetry reading allowing for that non-verbal, space. And yeah.
Sometimes that's interesting. I just thought of like when I've been in situations where a poet on stage or even on Zoom is doing something that's moving me in a way that I don't know why. Sometimes I feel just such compassion for them to even go there. Just compassion for like, oh gosh, the world that they're occupying is so much theirs. How beautiful. And like, thank you. Like, just like, oh gosh, like I needed that. Like I needed that. I didn't know I needed that until they did that. And there's been many poetry readings that have that, where somehow the poet found the right poem at the right time and either did a performance with it or just the poem itself. And in hindsight, afterwards, I said, well, why did that move me so much? I'm not quite sure, but I think I've learned that there is a compassion for like just taking a chance and just like seeing, okay, where are we going with this? I'm not quite sure, but I appreciate that. So the other side of that is that, yes, it could very well tap into something that you don't know. I did something very abstract. I wasn't showing, I had in mind to show pictures of something, and I said, let the words be what they are. Because the words are very, you might have been reacting to the words also, and there's a rhythm to it. There's a whole choreography to the notation of it. And there's this drone. There's a lot of emotional things happening in that recording. So you think of the moment that you're allowing something in. What are the other aspects that are affecting you in that way? So in this case, like we have the recording, which is very strong, and then there's this weird stuff happening on the camera. So like, why is Edwin doing that? I'm not quite sure, but let me just go with that. Why? Maybe there's a point where I try to figure out why the threads are doing that, and then there's a point where I say, okay, I'm just forgetting about it, and maybe I'll even close my eyes. Whatever, there's a point of like that charged moment, like I talked about, that space between us that has suddenly stopped, and now it's just the camera and you, like you're witnessing something. So there's a lot of I think, and then this goes back to vulnerability, to kind of like be vulnerable for messenger and receiver, to have us both be in this place that allows thinking to happen, allows feeling to happen, allows this kind of very safe space, almost like a conduit almost. And again, it's impossible to explain. It's just a feeling. So then the third side of that is the technical part of it, the working with recordings, working with musicians, working with dancers, working with other aspects besides language, to kind of like see where this thing called poetry can go beyond the words that you're hearing. What are the other aspects of my cognition that are letting me invent this world, invent this kind of picture in my head between what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. And I've always loved working with musicians and with recording. So that the recording with the whispering is with this great musician that I've worked with for years. And I thought, let me just try a whispering one. And he had this really beautiful, strange kind of like tremolo, high pitched thing to it. So I thought, what would happen if I recited with that? So anyway, so there's ways to play with the format. and they produce results that you can't quite explain always, but it feels good.
Edwin, can I say something real fast? I'm thinking a lot about Antonin Artaud and how performance is, this the great surrealist Artaud, that the performance is characterized by its relationship to the possibility of death, mortality. Your breath is, as it hits the air, it dies. We've talked a lot about the stage and breath and vulnerability and presentation of things that you see, maybe the string that you were playing with and so forth. And I think of you very much as that performance poet, but there's this piece I just wanted to show folks, this other thing, the page, right? Transferred Throat, a piece that was put together by Remy Thompson, sorry. Where have you placed yourself to be viewed by others? So you have this page. I don't know if you guys can see this very much. Woo! Transferred Throat. And you can see danger is the birth of angles and so forth. And my desire in this book called Event was to create an event out of words. And Edwin was very much at the center of this project. And I feel like I wanted to introduce that as another thing to think about with Edwin's whole repertoire, the page, as well as the stage, because I know we're probably exhausting you at this point. It's almost been 2 hours, but that's just a way of saying thank you. And
thank you, Roxy. No,
check out his actual pages, y'all.
The page, the visual aspect, that's the other component. Like I was like the book, what is the other part of the message being sent? How's not just like the poem as it is as a proper poem on the page, but also what happens when it has life, it has another life on the page, where it starts moving around, like what Roxy showed, like that page being all over the place. Where do I find myself in that page to allow myself to feel whatever I need to feel? So that's my graphic design.
The visual likeness of sound, like Marinetti was working with, you're a non-fascist version of that, just to have sort of, just a visual likeness of sound, very synesthetic.
I'm a non-fascist Marinetti.
That's good. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
Speak to us a bit about this book. I'm so glad that Roxy did bring this up, your visual, because you designed this gorgeous book. And I just will, quickly open to some typographical elements of the book. And you made everything in it, as far as I understand, right?
Yeah. That one, show that close to the camera.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the word dawn repeated over and over and over. And I wanted to kind of like explore like what is a rising dawn, literally a dawn rising, and how it doesn't become the word anymore. And how like I was trying to capture like the watching the sunrise, like how do you talk about that? And then so there, that's just exploring like where does the eye travel on the page? Along with like what I read for you today, where do you find yourself within all the language that you heard? Same thing with the book. Where do you place yourself within there? Lucien, there's a right. So that's like a like quote unquote more normal poem. But earlier, Lucien, there's a few pages that have the text bleeding off the side. Where I did a video where I was having text sort of floating on the page, and the text was about the concept of proportion. Like, what does proportion do to the eye, to the mindset? How do we approach proportion as beauty? And I was connecting that specifically to sound, but proportion connects to, So there, that's from a video, but then I made that for the page because I wanted to show like, can something created for one medium exist differently in another medium? So that's part of the questioning and the exploration that we talked about before. So.
Wow. Edwin, I looked up your name because it thought me interesting in the you mentioned Torres being Tower. So Edwin is a rich friend. So we have a rich friend tower here.
Edwin means rich friend?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Could that translate to actual money somehow?
Well, if people are poetry junkies, buy your book, yes.
I would welcome, no, in general, just with the world that I'm in. I'll tell people that, no, don't you know I'm a rich friend? Oh, that may open all the doors that I don't want, so I'll see.
Well, maybe God was joking, like with me, sending me to the city of the angels with my less than angelic demeanor. But does anyone else have a question? Maybe one or two last ones, because it is true that we've been here a long time with Edwin. I don't want to tire this merciless warrior merciful warrior, I should say.
Merciful warrior.
Of words.
I just wanted to say something, which is that listening to you read it reminded me a little bit of seeing Jeff Buckley sing. I don't know if anyone here has ever seen Jeff Buckley sing, but I saw him sing a couple of times, and it was amazing. It was as if his singing was a process, because it kind of didn't go to predictable places, and sometimes it failed. Like it went to a place that didn't work. And it was amazing to me that he was kind of not afraid of that, he was not afraid of it not working.
Right, that's great.
And that was actually what made it like spectacular, like really, really beautiful. And as if he was just an instrument that created this sound that only he could make, kind of. And this was really beautiful to see. And I was thinking then about the fact that I think a lot of the artists I love the most are ones where you feel that it's a process. Whatever they're doing will be interesting, whether or not it works.
Right.
And
Process.
I really enjoy this kind of art. And this I think this goes back to your point about this vulnerability, kind of the willingness to be vulnerable with the people who are listening to you.
Right.
And I think that's such a hard thing to do. And I think that it does make the other person vulnerable as well. Yes.
Right.
It's just very interesting, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and about and this discussion. So thank you. It was very interesting.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Yes,
Yeah.
process is very much at the center of what I'm doing. So I'm glad you picked up on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it.
Wow, Jeff Buckley, what a wonderful singer. One of my favorites.
Remarkable, like really amazing. And I think you need to see a live performance to really feel what was special about his singing. It's nice on the record, yes, but the live performance was another story, like truly magical.
Well, Edwin, I think that we are reaching an end. I guess I'd like you to respond to a question I've occasionally asked Poetry Junkies poets, and that is to respond to this quote from Wallace Stevens. After the final no, there comes a yes. And on this yes, the future world depends. So what is your yes, Edwin? End us with your yes.
Oh, I'd rather end with my no.
Spelled K-N-O-W or?
No, spelled N-O, I think. End with my no, my yes. Geez. So read the actual quote again. What is?
After the final no, there comes a yes.
Okay.
It's yes, the future world depends.
Geez, the future world, I think maybe the future world does depend on no more than yes. It's also who the hell knows what the future the aspect, the future world is changing every single second. So I think that the concept of the one yes affecting the second no is a whole. I mean, tell me, what was it, the poem? Tell me about a yes named no. The poem that I read. So I think I answered that I answered that already. I'm done. So yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much, my
Lucienne.
rich friend
Thank you all
Tower.
for being
Edwin,
here.
thank you so much.